Go live. Did it. I have done it. I've gone live. And now that I'm live, I'm feeling good. Feeling good about my live stream. There we go. Lisa Marie. Good name. Alrighty. Let's see. Hi there, Teresa. Victoria. Thank you for liking the live. Appreciate that. Final Ivy folds as Columbia University abandons test optional admissions policy. That can't possibly mean what I think it means, does it? Thank you, Roxy. Appreciate you liking the live too. Everybody who likes the live, just want you to know, every time you like the live, an angel gets its wings, and a little Muslim boy or girl gets a puppy, and a little Jewish boy or girl gets a pound of salt pork. So just keep on liking that live. The gifts will continue to flow. Well, now, I would love to tell you that I set this up specifically so that I could have this article pop up in my feed after I went live so that I could go, oh, shit, I told you so, but I didn't do that. I'm plugging in my charger, so sorry about the shaking. I'm just trying to make sure that you folks get some juice. Feel that? Yeah. Yeah, baby, I'm juicing you up right now. That's my phone number back there. Oh, you know what? I can go like, where the hell is it? Oh, now, Teresa. Getting a little Randy on me. I like it. Oh, it's down here, right? Yeah, here it is. Doink, I hit that. And then I hit mirror your, and then it's over there. See how that works? Peace treaty, yes. Yes, I am actually. It's not everything that I could have hoped for, but you know, it's a start. I would like to also see that from this point forward, any actions that are taken by Israel are taken by Israel alone, and that we acknowledge that in a peace treaty with Iran, that we no longer represent them. And by the way, as you might have expected, you know, gold's up since we announced this potential peace treaty. Gold's up 9%, 6%, 9%, something like that. It's, you know, I'm not watching super close. I hope there are no tolls. I don't think there are. I think the Iranians are very, very good negotiators, and they started with that one because they knew that would be a real tough one for anybody to swallow. But it's a great throwaway. You know, if you're expecting that, and then they say, oh, okay, yeah, we won't charge any tolls. It's like, okay, that's several $1 billion a year that other countries aren't going to have to pay, while looking at us and going, thanks, guys, appreciate that. Yeah. So, because that's basically where we would have been. More than 3 years after adopting test optional admissions, Columbia University is reversing course. Columbia University went with an optional. You don't have to take a test to come here. Admissions policy 3 years ago? I did not know that. That's absolutely the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. Yes. No, but I can tell you this. I'm starting to understand why. Because if you read the NDA, the National Defense Agreement, um, Article 214, which has now been moved, it was Article 226, and now it's like Article 219 or something. It's been moved around a little bit. But the National Defense Authorization Act has in it a clause that says that we will merge our military and our intelligence agencies with Israel completely. And it's interesting because Netanyahu is not stupid. About a month ago, he went on Meet the Press or one of these, and he said, look, Israel is not okay with taking money from the United States. The United States has done so much for Israel, and we so appreciate, all of the help that we've been given, but we don't want to take any more of aid from the United States for defense. And I thought, that's interesting. Hey, maybe. I thought, wow, that's very interesting that he would say that they don't want to ride our coattails anymore since they've done it so successfully for 60 years. Why would they stop taking our money? I know they love our money. Well, as it turns out, they don't want military aid anymore. What they want is full military partnership. They want to become part of the United States military so that unless the President of the United States sees a clear and present national security risk, they can never be taken out of our system once they're in our system. They want to be completely and totally integrated into the United States military and Pentagon, CIA, NSA, National Reconnaissance Office. Those are the real big boys with the satellites. They want not just access, they want full partnership. A what? Israel wants to literally have access to everything that the United States of America knows. That would mean that they're no longer just an ally. There's no ally in the world that has been given access like that. They wouldn't even be an ally anymore. They would be part of the United States. Don't you think we should have used the Kurds? No. The Kurds are not stupid. The Kurds don't want to be used anymore. Those are the same Kurds that we said we would support at the end of Desert Storm. And they stood up like we told them to, and then we didn't show up, and they got slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands. Well, I can tell you this, if they paid off every dime that they owed us, and by most accounts, it's in the neighborhood of $3.8 trillion since they started their little experiment called Israel. If they paid us back the entire $3.8 trillion that we've given to them scot-free, I still wouldn't want them to have access to all of our most sensitive information. They have lied to us hundreds of times. When we caught Pollard, one of their most successful spies, and said, "What is this?" Fuck yourself. What? But you're supposed to be our ally. You're spying on us. Yeah? So? That's their attitude. Yeah? So? Okay, well, we have a problem here, guys, because they're not our ally. If you ask the average person in Israel what they think of the United States of America or of Christians, they'll tell you that we're just a bunch of dirt bags and we're not even human. Seriously, that's literally what they'll say. I've seen the interviews, just on the street interviews. You ask any Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox Jew what they think of a Christian, they absolutely hate, with a capital H, they hate you. Now, here's what worries me. The National Defense Authorization Act never, ever gets debated and never gets shot down. It always gets passed. If that's the case, then this little rider that's put into it will mean that Israel now has access to every bit of information that the United States government possesses forever. And I'm going to ask you another question, and I want you to just come with me on this little act of imagination. Think about this for a second. If Israel has access to everything that we know, and we know that Israeli funded and Israeli backed corporations are now in control of AI and pushing AI and trying to make AI something that is basically omnipresent and omniscient. And we know that the United States government is now in a position where, even though China has 495 massive data centers, we already have 3,000 data centers in the United States. We're building 5,000 more. With all of those data centers, every single thing that you say, every single thing that you say in your home, your office, in your car, in a park, will be recorded. And Israel will have 100% full access to all of it. Now, does it make sense? You got to admit, 15 million people is a tiny, 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 tiny percentage of 7.5 billion people in the world. But boy, talk about auspicious, ambitious plans. They want to literally become a full partner with the United States, have access to everything that the United States government has access to, and then the United States government's going to build an additional 5,000 for a total of 8,000 massive data centers in 50 states. Do you really think that's so that your mail can get to you a day earlier? Do you think that's so Amazon can use drones to drop off a package in 20 minutes instead of a day? Do you really think that that's what these data centers are for? Nobody's that stupid. We just haven't thought about it. And I don't blame you. That's not what you do for a living. That's what I do for a living. My job is to think about this shit. And when I put one and one together, it makes two. That's really concerning. Who knows? You got to go, get out there with a test tube, my friend. Scoop up a test tube full of water, pay $1,000 or $500 or whatever it takes, and take it to a lab. Seriously, this is your fucking job now. Look, our government's gone. Our government's gone. AIPAC and all of the Israeli lobby owns our government. And now they're coming for our military. They're coming for our intelligence. They are literally trying to take over the United States. Benjamin Netanyahu made it very clear. And by the way, the bill that pushes this forward, other than the NDA, was put together by Tom Cotton. Now, look, I don't care if Tom Cotton gets caught in gay bars in Washington, D.C. That's none of my business. But clearly it's something he's extremely sensitive about. I say that if he came out of the closet, which it seems to me allegedly he's hiding, then maybe they wouldn't have as much leverage on him and they couldn't make him do these things. I don't know. All I can say is that Tom Cotton is with any common sense, you see Tom Cotton and you see that he's compromised. He is absolutely not interested in what's best for the United States. It's not even in the top 4. America first, my ass. America fourth would be nice with some of these fuckers, but we're not getting there. Here's what I can tell you. Right now, we're in a situation where we're overloading our power grid. We're overloading our water supplies. We've got an aquifer here in Arizona, in Butler Valley, which is our emergency aquifer, which I found out 5 years ago the Saudis were sucking dry so they could raise alfalfa for their fucking dairy cows because they like cold milk, but they're not stupid in Saudi Arabia. They're very wise. They said, you know what? We live in a desert. You'd have to be a fucking imbecile to raise alfalfa in a desert and waste all that water. So they came to Arizona and they got I know this is going to shock you, an attorney, a lawyer. Yeah, a lawyer named Tom Galvin at the Rose Law Firm here in Arizona to betray his country, betray his own city, betray the people that he goes to church with, betray all of the people that he lives in the same neighborhood as, and go and lobby for Saudi Arabia so that they could steal our water. Now, here's the best part. I raised a huge stink about this 5 years ago. And then it got on the local news because more people started talking about it. And pretty soon it was on the national news. And pretty soon the attorney general stepped in and the governor stepped in. And they said, hey, you guys, you Fundamante sounds very Hispanic. That's pretty normal here in Arizona. But Fundamante is not Hispanic. It's Saudi owned. And they're literally draining our emergency aquifer. So they canceled the leases that they had that said for $25, I think it was $25 a year per acre, you could have all the water underneath the ground that you wanted. Well, of course, they spent millions of dollars drilling extremely deep wells and pumping millions of gallons a day onto the surface of a huge area of desert, raising lots of alfalfa, destroying the aquifer, dropping the water level by 50 feet, putting all of the cattle ranchers and all of the farmers in the area out of business because they couldn't afford to keep drilling their wells deeper and deeper because it's very expensive. But they were kind enough that when the church in the little town next to where they're drilling, when that little church, when their well ran dry, the Saudis said, you know what? Don't worry. We'll truck water in for you. and they gave them a nice little water tank and trucked water in for them. So now that church exists based on the kindness of the Saudi Arabians. And by the way, those leases were canceled, and everybody celebrated. And all the politicians in Arizona said, see, we care about you. We love you. No more water for the Saudis. You bad Saudis don't get to steal our water anymore from that leased land. Okay. Why'd you say leased? Why'd you put that word in there? I went and checked because I'm a wordsmith. Words matter. Words matter a lot. They bought thousands and thousands of acres next to what they used to lease. The Saudis are still pumping our fucking aquifers dry, but they're only doing it from land they own now, not land they lease. There's no restrictions. I know that in Colorado, where the Sangria San something mountains, and it's a valley that comes down from two mountains. It's the coldest part of Colorado. It's a South Central Valley. I was looking into buying a huge amount of property there so that myself and a bunch of like-minded people who don't want to die could go and live there. And what I found that half the land in that valley is unusable. It's marshland. Marshland at 7,500 feet of elevation. Oh, it's runoff from the two mountains. You got a mountain range on one side and a mountain range on the other side, and you got this valley in the middle. So lots of runoff. The water table's a few feet deep. Well, shit, that's awesome. That's the perfect place to set up where you could just have an unlimited amount of water. Oh, no, that's not how that works. See, the problem is in Colorado, if you take water out of the ground, they monitor it. Every drop, and you pay for it. Yeah. Oh, you own the land? Fuck you. You don't own anything under the land. What? Yeah. Sorry, guys. But apparently, and this is probably why the Saudis came here to Arizona, apparently the people in Arizona are so easily bribed or tricked or whatever that they got thousands of acres. They've now destroyed, in effect, our emergency aquifer. And now we're talking about how the fuck are we going to build data centers that take up millions of gallons, where we've got golf courses that take up millions of gallons, when we've got Saudi farm companies that are raising alfalfa for their own dairy cows back home. They just ship the alfalfa back. It's called virtual water because they don't actually ship the water. I mean, hell, that's heavy. So they just raise whatever water intensive stupid crops they want in our desert and steal our water, and then they don't have to worry about it. By the way, if you think that's bad, if you go up to Kingman, about halfway to Kingman, there are pistachio farms. Oh yeah, pistachios are extremely water intensive. Those pistachios aren't for the United States. Those pistachios are for the Middle East. So we are literally letting corporations and the politicians that are owned by them destroy our country. What are we going to do about it? Well, I would suggest that you get ready for what comes next. What comes next is what's happening in Northern Ireland. Now, I didn't make this article up, although if I could have, I would have made this exact article. They're Israel's. Oh, God, that makes it even better. Okay, here we go. Power transformer lead times hit record highs as U.S. grid equipment shortage deepens. Folks, if you haven't bought my book, you can go right there to my channel, click to HowTube, buy my book if you want to survive if the grid goes down. If you read the first page, it says, I looked at all of the cataclysms. Zombie apocalypse. It's horseshit. Asteroid hitting the Earth. It's horseshit. A volcano that's so big that it brings on a nuclear winter. There's nothing you can do about that, and they only happen every several million years. So let's not spend a lot of time worrying about that. There's nothing we could do. If something the size of Yellowstone, and no, it won't be Yellowstone. Yellowstone will not erupt. How do I know that? Well, because I've studied Yellowstone intensely. Very intense. You think I'd move to Colorado, move myself 600, 700 miles closer to a super volcano if I thought it could possibly go off? The only super volcano that's going to go off anytime soon is Campe Flegrei. And that could go off any day now. Plenty of water in PA large rivers. PA, like Pennsylvania? I chose Colorado because of the altitude. It's going to be any place north of Colorado for probably 500 miles, and any place to the east of Colorado by a few hundred miles is going to be safe. Anything that you would consider high plains, but I'm beginning to get a little bit nervous. I wouldn't say that I'm as sure about the issues with our poles flipping as I am about the grid. The pole flip is real. The pole flip is happening. The pole flip was supposed to take thousands of years. That's what they said when I was a kid, when they started to realize it was happening. When I was a teenager, they said 1,000 years. When I was 20 something, they said there's no way it could happen in less than 900, maybe 1,000 years. By the time I was 40 something, I don't remember exactly, a university, I believe it was Berkeley, found evidence in lava samples and ice cores that showed that the last full-chron reversal took place in less than 90 years, not 900 years. That a full-chron reversal, which is where the North and South Pole completely flip over, and South is North and North is South, for thousands of years, that can happen in less than one human lifetime. And that was a big shock. And when I heard that, it made me a little bit nervous. Now, I'm not one of these guys. No, because, yeah, you can laugh at Berkeley if you want, but it's a hell of a school. It's just not a great place to live anymore. I would say that the physical locations of the different continents, et cetera, have not changed at all, and they're not going to for now. However, one of the mysteries that we all like to chew on, and remember that most people who study archaeology or ancient cultures, that's what they study. That they get a PhD in that. They spend their entire lives focused on this very narrow field of work. I've studied that quite a bit, but that's not my only field of work. I also study solar science, anthropology, dendrochronology, archaeoastronomy. I study a lot of different things because I'm curious. I'm a polymath. I want to know everything that I can possibly. If I'm interested, I want to know everything about it. If I'm not interested, I'm not interested. Nothing you can do. Nothing I can do. I don't want to. I don't want to do it. It's like pulling teeth. But if I'm interested, I can soak up the information extremely fast. One of the things that a lot of people don't look at when they see things like a Siberian woolly mammoth, and they see that it's got tropical flowers in its stomach which haven't even had a chance to digest, or that it's still chewing them like buttercups. Those are subtropical plants, and these 20,000, 25,000 pound animals are found in Siberia in the ground that's been frozen now absolutely solid as a rock, guaranteed frozen solid as a rock for tens of thousands of years, maybe 12,000, maybe 15,000, maybe 20,000 years. If they were in the tropics when they were munching on those flowers, how did they end up frozen? And how did they end up frozen so fast? It makes no sense. Well, clearly, El Rio, that was one of the worst apocalypses I've ever heard of. Now, I've seen and I've lived through some really shitty apocalypses. 1999, absolute letdown. Nothing happened. The millennium thing just was super dull. Although I got to admit, the December 21st, 2012, that could have been the worst apocalypse ever, because I literally drove around that day running my errands and doing my thing and thinking, fuck the Mayans. They're not nearly as intelligent as we gave them credit for. So let's get back to what I was talking about, though, because the reality is this. Will a comet or an asteroid hit the Earth? I don't know. I mean, thousands of them hit every day, but they're so small they're irrelevant. Will we get into a nuclear exchange with a nuclear superpower? It's starting to look less likely all the time. Okay. What about a supervolcano going off and creating a nuclear winter? It's possible. Campe Flegrei is considered a supervolcano, and it is acting very irrationally. There are signs that Long Lake, which is one of the largest supervolcanoes on planet Earth, located in California, is active again, which we didn't think. Yellowstone is the least dangerous supervolcano on the planet right now. In order to really have the ability to have a large explosion, the amount of really liquefied gas-filled magma has to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 28%. Now you've got a very dangerous volcano. Yellowstone's at 13%. Some argue that the periphery of it is around 6%. So there's a lot of cooled off magma. There is some magma. It's a big magma chamber. And it goes up and down. You're talking about a 60-mile long caldera. It's fucking huge. I mean, that's a big volcano, 60 miles. They didn't realize it wasn't a valley at first. They thought it was a valley. And then they realized this valley's kind of oval shaped. Shit, this is a caldera. It's big. But it looks like over the course of the last 2.5, 3 million years, it's been getting less and less spicy. And now it's gotten to the point where it would take quite a surge of energy to activate that volcano. And there's nothing happening right now. As you know, the North American plate, Yellowstone, and it erupted here, and then it erupted here, and it erupted here, and it erupted here, and it's just moving, and this part of the United States is moving west over it, and it's gotten to the point now where it's starting to look like, can't call it extinct, but as long as Old Faithful's going off regularly, as long as all those hot springs are bubbling and they're doing all, that's letting off pressure. That's exactly what you want. Now, with a place like Campe Flegrei, where the ground might rise by 4 or 5 feet, and there's sulfur spewing everywhere, and there are earthquake swarms happening, and buildings are starting to collapse, it's like, look, I don't know what the fuck the Italian people are thinking, but there's 500,000 people that live on top of that volcano. It is absolutely active, and it is the most dangerous super volcano in the world. Oh, there are more dangerous volcanoes. I mean, shit, there are volcanoes all over the place. The Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire is constantly, we have 144, 145, depending on the year, volcanoes that go off every year. So when people say, oh my God, there's so many volcanoes going off, what is it? Oh, the Lord this or the Lord that. No, that's called geology. And sometimes you get 120. Sometimes you get 160. But on average, it's about 144, 145, somewhere in there. And it's not a big deal. Now, there are a couple that I watch because I'm curious and they make me nervous as hell. One of which is La Palma off the coast of Africa. And the reason I watch La Palma is because it rises several thousand feet out of the ocean, almost vertically, but it also goes down into the ocean another 4,000 feet almost vertically. And that volcano is set up in such a way that as the magma chamber rises, there are sheets like this that are almost vertical, sheets of granite and soil and granite and sand and granite and soil. And these sheets are literally just holding on by friction. Now, they're not perfectly vertical, but they're at a very steep angle. And what happens is when the magma chamber rises up and heats the water that's trapped between these pieces, it creates pressure in the steam, and you can have a landslide. Now, if the side of that island slid off into the ocean, we have proof that it's created 1,000-foot tsunami before. Well, that takes out the entire East Coast. Earthquakes are the biggest threat. Not even close. Earthquakes are literally not something I even think twice about. The biggest threat as far as an earthquake right now is the San Andreas Fault, the southern tip of the San Andreas Fault. It's got the most amount of pressure built up that it's had for the last 900 years, according to geologists. Yes, I study this every day. So, and it's at the boundary of another fault, which is also built up a 900-year high for pressure. Here's the good news. If the San Andreas lets go, it doesn't necessarily mean that the other fault will. If the other fault lets go, it will increase the pressure exponentially on the San Andreas, and it will go. And the part of the San Andreas that is the weakest, which is ironic because I used to drive over it. Literally, I drove across the San Andreas Fault almost every day. The freeway runs right over it. And as you go over it, it's like a little bridge that goes over like a dry wash. Except you look one way, you look the other way, and there's this jagged, tiny valley. It looks almost like a riverbed, and it stretches off in both directions. That's the San Andreas Fault, and she's a nasty one. So it's that lets go. It's just northeast of Los Angeles, and it will do a huge amount of damage. It could be 7.5, 7.8. I mean, it's a huge earthquake for a big city. Again, you don't need a 9.5, but um, I don't think that that's something that that's not global. That's not a cataclysm. That's a clusterfuck. That's a big problem for a few million people. Remember, we're talking about things that affect the entire globe. Now, do I think that this issue that I'm reading about right now? I've never read this article, so you and I are looking at it for the first time together. But power transformer lead time now is an average of 128 weeks, nearly 2.5 years, with generators, stand-up transformers averaging 144 weeks. Ugh. Prices on power transformers have risen 77% since 2019, driven by surging demand and constrained raw material supply. Hmm. Wow. Okay. Let's see. Uh, yeah, that's what I thought. We only have one domestic supplier of the type of electrical steel we need, and roughly 80% of large transformers, which are the largest. So when they say 80% of large transformers, what they mean is 80% of the huge capacity transformers, um, and 100% of the largest. So if you're talking about a 1.5 gigavolt, something huge like that, then it's going to be foreign made. We don't make those. So we have a little bit of a problem here because there's nothing we can do to get them faster. And by the way, you must have those if you want to build data centers, period. That's the only way to do it. Now, the only other option is to divert the electricity that you've already got for an area to those data centers. There's only so much electricity you can bring into a city without these transformers. So if you're running 750 kilovolt lines, the big, huge lines that you see on those enormous steel towers, if you're running those 750 kilovolt lines into a city, that doesn't do you any good unless you've got step down transformers that are basically the size of a motorhome, a big motorhome. And they weigh about 800,000 pounds. They're incredibly difficult to move because they're technically not really made to move on highways at all. Most highways are not even equipped to transport something that heavy. The ones that are, like the 10 freeway, which is, literally transcontinental, you can put them on specially made 4 semi trailers that are all interlinked. It's crazy. Can't put solar panels on a data center. Absolutely not. Nope. I thought they were going to bring reactors. Do you have any idea how long it takes to from start to finish, to break ground to the time you start to ramp up a nuclear reactor? You're talking about 10 or 15 years of building. You're talking about a dome that is 15 stories, 20 stories tall. And it is literally, this enormous dome is made of 3-foot thick reinforced concrete. Now, just think about this. If you wanted to build a dome 15 stories tall that was maybe 200 feet across, something that looks like a grain silo but could hold 1,000 grain silos inside of it, if you wanted to build just the reinforcing steel, the rebar, think about how difficult that would be. Now, when I was growing up and they were building Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant in California, I went to school with all the kids whose parents worked there. and all the guys who worked in construction who were building it. And I'll never forget the first time I tried squid. They said calamari. I said, shit, yeah, I'll try calamari. I'm a tough guy. They brought in these little things that had these little tentacles all over them. And I was like, the fuck is that? They were like, it's calamari. I said, they look like deep fried spiders, bro. They said, no, they're squid. Oh, I didn't know they were squid. They looked disgusting. I shot my dad a look, and he said, and I quote, "Don't be a pussy." And I said, okay, no problem. And I stuck one in my mouth and started chewing it because I didn't want to get my ass kicked. So the reason I bring that up is because that same night, I remember sitting behind the couch and eavesdropping on my parents' conversation with their friends, as I was prone to do. And I remember the guy saying, yeah, man, I don't know how the fuck they're going to keep this reactor from blowing up. Like, literally, I'll be using the jackhammer and or the hammer drill, and I'll be drilling through the concrete dome. And in one part, I'll go through 3 or 4 bits to get all the way through the dome. It's that fucking hard. And in other ones, I'll use 1 bit and it'll take me 45 seconds to go through 3 feet. It's like drilling through sand. Same reactor dome. And he said, man, the workmanship on this thing is so shitty. I don't want to live here when they fire it up. Now, luckily, Diablo Canyon really had no problems. It ran, it did its thing. It was an awesome version. It really was. And, you know, as much as I hated nuclear power in the 70s, and as much as, you know, me and all my family and all of our friends, even though, you know, I grew up in a very Republican household, we still demonstrated that shit. We did not want them to blow us up with a fucking nuclear technology. So one day at a nuclear power plant where I was getting a tour up in Washington, I said to the guy, yeah, you know, the only thing that ever worried me about nukes is the whole idea of the China syndrome. And he smiled and he said, well, that's not possible. And I said, the China syndrome's not possible, but they made a movie about it. That, like, it's a thing. Everybody talked about it in the 70s. And he said, right. And then we realized through some issues that we had that can't happen. And I said, okay, walk me through this. Let's say you've got some fuel rods. They get stuck. You can't push them down in. The reaction heats up. You get to a point where it flashes. It's gone supercritical now. And he goes, oh, you know a little bit about nuclear power plants. And I said, oh, yeah, I've read a lot about them. First book I ever read was about a nuclear power plant melting down. So he said, all right, well, then imagine this. We can't scram it. We can't fill it with water because obviously if we scram it, we fill it with water, the water superheats, and then we get an explosion. We blow the top off the dome. I said, right. He goes, but what if, as it's melting down, it melts down through the floor of the containment dome, down into the basement. Now it's melting down into the ground. I said, yeah. And he goes, and it melts down into the earth. I said, right. It just keeps going and keeps going. And he said, no. Because as it heats up, the dirt and the rocks and whatever's in its way, this superheated mass of molten goo, it's incorporating all of that stuff that it's melting in this nuclear puddle, and it's being diluted. I went, that makes sense. And he goes, right. And it gets to a point where it dilutes itself to becoming non-supercritical. I went, son of a bitch, well, how long does that take? And he goes, hundreds of feet. And I said, well, what was the problem with Chernobyl? And he goes, it's sitting on an aquifer. And I went, no shit. He goes, yeah. That was the problem with Chernobyl, sitting on an aquifer. I said, well, you guys didn't build one on an aquifer too, did you? Yeah. Yeah, they sure did, because it's next to a river. Yeah, that's the problem. Thermodynamics 101, that's right. And it's a funny thing about thermodynamics. If you study thermodynamics, it's your friend. Thermodynamics can keep you very warm on a very cold night. Or it can melt through the floor of your containment dome and into an aquifer that literally kills 50 million people. That's literally why they had the guys go and dig underneath Chernobyl and then freeze it. There's nothing else you can do. You can't allow that shit to leak into the groundwater. If you do, the groundwater for thousands of miles will be completely unusable for only about 50,000 years. That's the problem with nukes. So, but let's just say we don't have nukes and we just go with normal power. Oh, what's this? Tasty little chart. Equipment, power transmitters, average lead time, 128 weeks. Price change since 2019, 77%. Demand growth since 2019, up 119%. Ooh, generator step-up transformers. These are not step-down transformers taking high voltage and breaking it down to where it can be fed into little streams like to your house. This is a step-up transformer. Now, the good news is, even though it takes 144 weeks to get one, the price has only gone up by 45%. The demand has gone up by 274%. Data centers, distribution transformers, extended but shorter, 78 to 95% increase, and the demand growth is 34%. Okay, well, I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing here, but what I'm seeing here is, oh shit. Frequently asked questions. Why are transformer lead times so long? Well, because we don't make them here. Because corporations don't give a shit about supply and demand. What they care about is they care about supply as cheaply as possible to meet demand. So, how much have transformers increased? Okay. What makes grain-oriented steel? Okay, that's not an issue. Well, this is going to be really interesting, folks, because we've got an old, shitty, dilapidated system where the average life cycle of a major transformer is supposed to be 40 years or less. The average time that these have been in use in the United States now is over 40 years. Now, just because you're probably thinking, well, okay, but I mean, we'll just replace them now. Okay. How many large transformers are there in the electrical grid for the entire United States? We are so fucked. They are literally exactly, they've got a picture of one. This is exactly the type of transformer I'm talking about. The United States has approximately 70,000 large power transformers in operation across its high voltage transmission grid. These massive units, which can weigh anywhere from 100 to 400 tons. Remember when I said 800,000 pounds a little while ago? I hope you understand now I wasn't guessing. It wasn't a guess. That's 400 tons. And handle bulk voltage transformers at the nation's 55,000 plus electrical substations, handle over 90% of the electricity consumed in the United States. And let's see. Let's ask some questions that are going to make you very, very nervous. How long are the large transformers in the power grid designed to last? 30 to 40 years. Okay. Let's see. And, okay. Most of the transformers are, exceed, oh, I love how they do this, you slippery sons of bitches. They don't say specifically, they just say they exceed 25 years. Well, thank you for not giving me an answer. That's really nice. And it wants to know, are you tracking the age of a specific transformer? No, I'm not looking at the specific age of a transformer, although if I did, that would put me on a watch list instantly. Well, actually, we were just talking about that, El Rayo. It takes about 2 to 4 years to get one now. Here's the problem. We have 70,000 of them. And as it says right here, most of them need to be replaced now. So if it takes 2 to 4 years to get one, how long would it take to, just for fun, let's ask. How long would it take to build 70,000 large transformers for the United States power grid? Well, it would take decades at current production rates, with lead times averaging over 2 years per unit and severe bottlenecks in specialized electrical steel. Oh, that's why they kept bringing up the electrical steel, because it's extremely important, and there's only one place it's made in all of the United States. So does that mean it's not made? No, of course it's made in China, it's made in Korea, it's made in a lot of places that produce steel. But we are still supposed to be a pretty big steel producer. We just don't produce the type of steel necessary to rebuild our grid. And by the way, how much does one cost? That's not too bad. They're only $200,000. Wow, that's fantastic. That is just absolutely amazing. Wait a minute. So if we're talking about $150,000, what is $150,000 times 70,000? $10,500,000,000? 10,500,000,000 to replace all of the transformers in the United States. What is the total amount of aid that we have given the Ukrainians in the last 4 years? $188 billion. Think about what I just said. We gave Ukraine $188 billion. It would cost over $10 billion just for transformers. Now keep in mind, that's just for the transformers. Now you have to transport them, you have to put them in, you have to hook them up. You're talking about probably twice that much. So let's say that you spent 20 billion. That still leaves $168 billion we could have sent to the Ukrainians to piss it away and steal it from us. Not all of it, probably just half. That is quite something. That is absolutely crazy. Huh. Well, I think that I think that we're in deep shit because nobody's going to fix the power grid. Just so you know, nobody's coming. There's no big beautiful bill for this. What we're looking at here, and again, people think about what I do for a living. Do you think that there are any coincidences here? I'm in the silver business because silver is real money, regardless of whether your country is operating correctly or not. Silver is agreed upon for thousands of years as money. Number two, I just finished writing a book about what happens if the power grid goes down, not about zombies or zombie satellites attacking the United States or aliens that happen to have a taste for, for hot young girls with large breasts. Great movie, probably, but that's not what's going to happen. Bottom line is this. I wrote a book explaining how to survive if the grid goes down. Now I'm explaining to you that the reason I did is because the grid's going to go down. Period. It's not a matter of could it? It will. So then what? 3,000 ounces is a great start. It is a very good start. Of course, it also depends on how much money you've got. If that's 5% of your net worth, no, it's not even close. I mean, I guess I would put it to you this way. How much of your portfolio, how much of your total assets and your total wealth do you want to lose? Look at what the U.S. has been doing for the last 10 years, though. I do that every single day for the last 30 years. I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because I don't think that the grid will go down because we've been attacked by someone else. I believe the grid's going to go down because of the fact that in our solar cycles, the last 4 or 5 solar cycles, we've had a few extremely large solar outbursts, absolute civilization ending outbursts. And luckily for us, they have been pointed just off to one side or just off to the other side. In one case, the sun had rotated just out of reach of this enormous coronal mass ejection. And it blew off and up. And if it had been 2 days prior, it would have been pointed directly at Earth and you and I wouldn't be talking. There would be zero electronics, zero electricity on Earth, period. Period. No electronics, nothing would have survived that. No, because if our grid goes down, everybody's grid goes down. That's the way it's going to work. What we're going to lose our grid to, in my opinion, is a solar outburst. We're way overdue for a big solar outburst. When I say big, I don't mean huge. Look, on a scale of 1 to 1,000, which is now, unfortunately, a possibility. We thought that maybe an X40, an X50, these are the types of solar flares. We thought that maybe an X40 or X50 was huge, and that every several thousand years, maybe you had an X100. as it turns out, every maybe 500 to 1,000 years, you have an X100, and every so often you have an X1000. And an X1000 will kill everything on the Earth or on the sun facing side of the Earth. Now, luckily, these don't happen very often. We don't even know if there's any kind of regularity to them, what causes them, why. Underground power cables will not help anything because at some point they have to come up. And as soon as they attach to something, you have to understand these long line cables actually soak up the energy in the atmosphere. So if you have underground cables, they're sitting underground, the both ends of the tunnel are capped off, closed, and they are not exposed to any kind of atmospheric energy, they're going to be fine. How do you do that? Well, you bury them and you never use them. We don't have time for that. 70% in gold and silver. Okay. You're way, way, way heavy in gold. That's way too much gold. And I get it. I love the shiny too. Everybody loves the shiny. But the reality is this: if there's ever a problem and you have a piece of gold this big, if you're trying to buy a farm, that will work. But if you literally have something this size that's made out of gold, you're screwed, because this could literally be worth $10, $15, $20,000. Somebody might be willing to trade you their home for a piece of gold this big. What are you going to do if you've got 800 ounces of it? It does you no good. The old rule is that copper, what I've got here, this is something that you should have a shitload of just because it's the currency of the common man. Silver is the currency of a wealthy man. And gold is only the currency of kings. Because if you've got 5 kilos of it, what's 5 kilos now? It'd be about $500,000, maybe $750. If you have a kilo bar, what the hell do you do with a kilo bar? I mean, it's not a big bar, but it's worth so much value that how do you spend that? See what I'm saying? It's hard to translate that into a daily transaction. Whereas this, if it's copper, back 200 years ago, something like this could buy you a sandwich. Okay. And remember that 10 pieces of candy were a half a penny. Dude, the Department of Energy is a clusterfuck of idiots, and they'll never be able to get enough done. There's nobody in the United States that makes them now. And this Production Act, the last one I saw was the one that Trump signed. And if that's the one you're talking about, that was in his last term. That's how old that is. And nobody's done shit. Copper rounds are stupidly expensive. Raleigh Painting Company, that's for painting and carpentry. Dude, I'm from California. Dude is an actual affirmation. And it means 400 or 500 different things. There's dude, which means that's cool. You know this. You speak dude. And then there's dude, which is like, God, I know you had Taco Bell last night, but really here in the car, get out. See what I'm saying? Did he really give Iran 300 billion of our dollars? No. No, 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 no. He agreed to give $300 billion of Iran's money back to them. That's theirs. Just like the money Obama sent. And I don't know if it's 300 billion. That sounds like a little bit much. Yeah, now the way he pronounced it, dude, that obviously means, I don't know how you pull that off, but that's epic. That's like if you come back with a girl's number and she's just way out of your league. Okay, I've been following you, but you're exaggerating the electrical grid issue, right? No, No, not at all. I mean, it's so bad that it's actually laughable. And the more I talk to people, the more I talk to electrical engineers, I go to APS, Arizona Power Supply, or Arizona Power Service, or SRP, or any of these companies, and I talk to them, and their attitude is like, "Look, bro, we can't do this shit. We have to make a profit. What do you want us to just go out and buy new equipment? Oh, hey, look, ours works fine. Yeah, it's getting a little rusty, a little dusty, a little musty, but shit, it still works. What do you want us to do? Just go out and buy all new equipment?" You explain that to our stockholders. We're a public company, bro. That's the answer I get. That's the problem. That's the problem I see the United States, and really the world, but specifically the United States, has had since the 80s. When corporate felons found out that it's only a felony if you do it as a human being, but as the CEO of a corporation, you almost never get in trouble for it. Almost never get in trouble for it. So, well, wait, then why do I care if it's illegal? Well, now hold on. Gotta have a little space there. Okay, so, oh, I see what you're saying. So management alluded to the fact that it could be, but then the lawyers said that they weren't absolutely certain, so now I can do it. Right. There you go. Boom. That's it. That's the problem. The feds and the municipalities, I want to find something out. Because who owns the massive, wait a minute, no, let me redo that. Who owns the largest transformers? Who owns the largest transformers in the United States electrical grid? Let's find out. The largest single owner of electrical transmission infrastructure in the United States is the American Electric Power. Yeah, like I said, it's not the federal government. The federal government doesn't own anything, and it doesn't do anything except charge you more taxes and give away your rights. I'm not sure that you understand that. Oh, and TVA, don't forget the Tennessee Valley Authority. That's got to be who that means. Let's see. Then there's the let's see. Oh, look at this. They actually had the balls to put the Virginia Transformer Corporation on here. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I've been to their website. As we look to the future, blah, blah, blah. Okay, our markets. Holy shit. What? Manufactured the first 300 million volt amp transformer. Oh, it's in Mexico, of course. And how long does it take? 2015. Okay. Are they building those for us? Well, they're not building them for us, but at least they're in the United States. That's something. But from what I remember, there was something about their. I remember I went through all of their stuff, and they do have big transformers, but for some reason they don't really count. And I can't remember if it's because they only make a couple of them per year. Product range. Well, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. They literally made a 500 MVA, 525 kilovolt transformer. Jesus. Yeah, I would love to see how they won't say how long their wait time is, but I'll actually call them tomorrow and I'll find out because like these 12 millivolt million volt to 30 millivolt, that's plenty. Like that's big enough that if they could crank those out, those would be awesome. Although I don't think they can, but if they could, that would help. But keep in mind, if I knock, according to the DoD, if I knock 9 or 10 of these massive transmitters offline, it takes the whole fucking grid down for the United States. The whole grid for the United States. Now, you got to ask yourself, how is that possible? Well, if you're talking about something like APS and SRP, right now they're capable of a maximum output of about, I think the largest day they've ever had was 18.6 gigawatts of energy that they put out in one day. And that was last summer when it hit 117 degrees. So almost 19. Now, the maximum amount they can possibly put out is 19.3. So if they can only put out 19.3 gig and they're putting out 18.6 on a hot day in Arizona, which there are lots of, where are we going to run all of these data centers that we're building in Arizona from? The TSMC plant, the Taiwan chip plant, which is the largest one in the world now, it's bigger than the one in Taiwan, it's 10 miles from my house. It's massive. It covers 30 acres indoors. How are you going to run that? How are we going to run that? On what? We're maxing out our system, and APS and SRP are squawking about, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to build more solar. You going to do that soon? Because if you don't, we're in trouble. Dark energy. I hope you're referring to taking my coffee black, because you're talking about like dark matter and all that bullshit. That's literally what that is. Oh, you can make like if you're talking about putting solar panels on a data center, and that's going to be enough. These data centers use up an ungodly amount. So let's find out. What's the largest amount of energy produced in Arizona by a solar farm? Okay. The largest solar farm operating in Arizona is the Sonoran Solar Energy Facility, which produces up to 490 megawatts of electricity, developed by Next Era Energy. It spans across Maricopa County and, okay, so wait a minute. Oh, fuck, megawatts. That's why I was like, that's impossible. If we can only make 19 and they're talking about making 490, I'm talking about gigawatts and they're talking about megawatts. So 490, if they made 500 megawatts, that would be half a gig, right? In an area where we need probably, according to them, an additional 9 gigawatts. Well, shit. Yep, 18 gigs on a super hot day. You bet. I think was it 18.3 or 18.6 that it was last. I think that was the most that they've ever done. Dark matter. That's complicated. There's no such thing as dark matter. That's why all of these idiots that are chasing dark matter cracks me up. The reason they've never found anything, they've never found a single shred of evidence, not a single piece of evidence that suggests that dark matter is real, is because it's not real. Well, maybe it's real and they just haven't found it yet. Look, you can come up with your string theory and you can use 14 different forms of reality and 32 different dimensions. And, yes, a dandelion can literally hold up an elephant if you use enough math, but it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Right? Dark matter is nothing. What you have to understand is that dark matter was come up with because I don't think that they were ready, and they still aren't, to admit that the universe is electrical. Everything in the universe is electrical. If you look at the electrical system that is the brain and just look at the synapse, not all the fat and all the other bullshit, blood flow, any of that stuff, just look at the synapse of the brain, the electrical system of the brain, and you see a picture of that, and you overlay that with NASA's new picture of the universe and of the electrical systems that connect all of the galaxies, they look almost identical. Almost identical. Well, now, isn't that interesting? The bottom line is the entire universe is an electrical system. Now, if we just hadn't stolen Tesla's technology and hidden it away, we'd be fine right now. We wouldn't even need to be talking about this. However, in my opinion, there are two things going on simultaneously. Number one, the government's planning on a complete and utter collapse worldwide of all of the power grids. They have a complete plan of continuity of government in place, and once the power grid collapses, they will pop out of the ground like a bunch of greedy little asshole gophers and start setting up a government again, albeit slowly. Number two is, if we don't get that solar flare that we're so overdue for, then what we will end up with is a system of complete and utter surveillance. A surveillance state that is like nothing you've ever seen. China only needs 495 massive data centers to control its entire 1 billion population. We have, at this point, how many data centers already exist in the United States today? Between 4,000 and 5,400 operational data centers. There are 600 just in Virginia alone. Gee, I wonder what they're doing with it. Well, I mean, a Mad Max world would be fine as long as you're not living in the desert, as long as you're living in some kind of, forest somewhere with lots and lots of food. Well, we're not trying to control the world, but there's a little tiny country in the Middle East that has decided it wants to take over the United States, and it's in the process of doing it right now. Well, Luxter, that to me is the great mystery. What's going to happen first? Are we going to be completely and utterly at the mercy of AI? Is AI going to begin to make Palantir's system completely and totally operational? Because Palantir is very simple. Palantir is a very simple organization. They simply want every metric of information about you that exists, which means that when you're at home at night, your Alexa will be storing data about you. Your phone will be storing data. Your computer will be storing data. the thing that most people don't understand is that the patents, and you can look these up, the patents already exist for Ford and Chrysler and Chevrolet to use biometric face identification in all of their vehicles so that they can decide when you're too tired to drive. They can decide when you are too excited, too upset to drive. They can decide if you're too intoxicated to drive. They can listen to you while you're talking to your passengers. This is all stuff that's already been approved by the patent office. These are patents that will be going into effect I know for a fact, Ford trucks over the course of the next couple of years. Jump in your truck screaming and it won't start. Jump in your truck after a few beers, it won't start. Period. Even if you're just trying to move it down the driveway. Even if you're on your own private property and you're just trying to head back up to the house from the creek, your car will know that you're drunk or that you've been drinking. It won't start. Think about that for a second. Your car will decide. Now, somebody brought up a great point. What if you're working in the field and you accidentally hit yourself in the thigh with your chainsaw? You slap a tourniquet on there as tight as you can, you hobble over to your truck and you jump in. And because your pulse is 185 and your breath is ragged and your eyes are extremely dilated, the truck decides that you're in no shape to drive and it won't start. Well, isn't that interesting? Well, that's been done. There's no question that's been done. That was done to a reporter for, I believe it was the New York Times. He broke a story that ended General McChrystal's career in Afghanistan, which is sad because McChrystal was a good dude, but he was making fun of Obama and Biden's stupidity in prosecuting the war, and he was joking with some of his other higher ups, colonels and whatnot, and he just assumed that after so much time together, this journalist would not put that in his Rolling Stone article, but he did. Yep. So, needless to say, he was worried about his car being tampered with. He got into something that had to do with the NSA and spying right about the same time that Snowden released all of his files. He said that he'd come up with something that was even bigger, and that it had to do with the intelligence agencies and what they were really doing. And he was very nervous about the story. He complained to his friends that he felt like he was being followed, and he went next door to his neighbor's house and asked her if he could borrow her Volvo to drive because he felt like somebody'd been tampering with his Mercedes. And she said no, so he drove his Mercedes. And it went screaming down the street at 125 miles an hour at 2 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles, veered uncontrollably into a palm tree and exploded. It didn't catch on fire. It exploded. There was one traffic cam pointed in that direction, and it exploded. And even though he drove front end first into a tree, which should drive the engine back and down underneath the car, that's the way they're designed, the engine was found 100 feet in front of the car down the street. Almost like something had blown up inside the car and shot the engine 100 feet down the street. So who knows what actually happened to him, but the former the former attorney general said that they felt pretty safe in saying that that car was crashed on purpose. And because it was a brand new Mercedes and it was like 2016, they said that the technology already existed to do all of that. So, you know, yeah, do I think that Tesla would do something like that? Um, that Elon Musk is evil? No. Do I think that there are people who can get into any of his cars without his consent or knowledge and do whatever they want? Of course. Of course there are. So, again, we're going back to this big brother, big, evil government watching over us. And all I can tell you is be prepared, because a great reset, when they say great reset, how great? If you're a government and you're borrowing money like a drunken sailor, like you don't care because you'll never have to pay it back anyway, somebody should stop and ask, are they going to pay it back? Because it seems like they don't really care. They're just pissing away money like it doesn't matter at all. 100 billion here, 100 billion there, 34 trillion in debt, 38 trillion in debt, 39 trillion in debt, whatever, 40 trillion in debt, whatever. It's not the real number anyway. No, that doesn't take into consideration retirement stuff. Social Security, Medicare, you add all that shit in, you're looking at $100 trillion that the United States owes. How could it possibly pay that back? Our debt to GDP ratio is over 120%. It's like if you got fired from your job and you applied for every single credit card you could possibly imagine, then went out and bought yourself a brand new car. What are you doing? Well, got to have a strategy somewhere, right? Yeah, well, either A, you are content with having a FICO score of 12, or B, you don't plan on paying it back. You got a strategy here somewhere. What is it? That's the question. What's the outcome that they're looking for here? Because I can tell you this, the outcome I see is not good. No, I didn't watch. I'm not. Look, man. Um, Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison borrowed money from the CIA in order to start Oracle. It's obvious. It's part of his. It's literally on his website. Larry Ellison donates $100 million a year to the Israeli Defense Forces. Okay. His son owns. Misinformation. I just got hit with a violation for misinformation. Funny how that works. As soon as I said something about the guy who owns TikTok, I got hit with misinformation. Literally, he owns TikTok now. By the way, that number behind me, that's the number that you want to call if you want gold and silver. And I suggest silver, lots of it. No, Larry is a Christian. He was adopted and raised by a Jewish family, of course. His son now owns Paramount and CNN, ESPN, Warner Brothers. They're buying Warner Brothers. I mean, basically, he owns all of the media. And then Larry, through the Texas Project, took over this platform and has completely destroyed it, completely and utterly. Very strange. 2276. Let's take a quick peek at silver again, see how we're doing. Yeah, it's gone back up 10% over the last 5 days because it's, no more war means we get to get back on our 150 to $300 track for silver, which is where we should be. This war was a really stupid, poorly thought out idea. We were talked into it by the tiny hats. We should have never been a part of this. This has nothing to do with us. Well, yeah, I mean, per ounce, Annie, gold's at $4,300 and silver's only at 69.80. It's a huge difference. And there's always been a difference, but normally the difference is about 15 to 1. Right now it's about 60 to 1 difference, which means you need 60 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. Well, that's not normal. Can you show us the full telephone number, please? Oh, yeah. 2276. There it is. 480-343-2276. Yeah, it's been about 15 to 1. And so if it goes back to 15 to 1, then you're looking at $500 an ounce silver. Now, if gold goes up more, which it will, it could double. But during that same time that gold doubles, silver is going to quadruple. Well, I mean, look, if you want to make 100%, good for you. If you want to make 400%, even better for you. So call me because I deal with a lot of silver and I've got very good prices on silver. They're excellent. Phone number right back there. Oh, you know what? Hell, I'll just hold this up. I've still got this. Look at that. Well, Annie, the reason is my job is to make people money. That's it. So I love gold. I mean, gold is gorgeous. However, if I know that silver is going to make people a lot more money than gold will, I got to recommend it, and I know it will. In the 70s, gold went up by 600%. That's huge. Silver went up by 700%. That's huger. It's an interesting word, huger. So bottom line is it always goes up more. And that's why. That's why I recommend it to people. Because it's easier to, if you ever had to buy anything with it, it's going to be a lot easier to use silver than it is to use gold. Because if you've got a kilo of gold, let's see, 31 times 43. So add a couple zeros. So it's $133,000 for a kilo of gold. What are you going to do with a kilo of gold? God forbid it doubles. Then what? Now you got a real issue. So, from going from where we're at now, which is what are we at? 70 basically. Going from 70 to 140. Can you still buy stuff for $140? Absolutely. Well, here's the thing: if you're buying it from most places, they'll sell it to you for $10 over spot, and they'll buy it back for $5 under spot. It's a $15 swing. It's a huge deal. For me, I sell it for a few dollars over spot, and I buy it back at spot. So it's a very small swing. I just don't make as much. That's all. I don't think too much about colloidal silver just because I don't deal with it. But I mean, it works. It's good stuff. I've used it before. Yeah, of course, junk silver is still silver. Bottom line, and it's cheap. Just people don't seem to realize that silver is silver. Silver is silver. So, okay, so if you go to my channel up here, right there, I think is where you push. So if you go there, you can get the book, Survive the Crisis, which is a good book. It's very good. It's necessary. I used it on your pets. That sounds very expensive. Of course, most people love their pets more than they love their children, so I get it. I understand. All right, kids, I'm going to jump, but call that number tomorrow or text me. Um, no, I wouldn't sell them. I mean, the reason I say I wouldn't sell them now is because I know how much they're going to go up. But again, if you've had them since they were $4, which would only be 20 years, if you had them since they were $4 and now they're 70, yeah. I mean, if you have something else that you really, really want, you've got something specific in mind other than an investment, because if you're going to invest that money, keep it in silver. Silver is better than anything else right now anyway. So just keep it there. Silver eagles or ingots? Neither. Silver eagles are ridiculously expensive for no reason. They've got a huge premium that they shouldn't have. And ingots, the bars are just not my thing. I mean, if somebody calls me and says, I really like the bars, okay, fine. You know, you can have bars. But coins look like money. I mean, I show you this and you go, oh, hey, what is that? That looks like a penny or something. Yeah, it's 1 ounce of copper. Well, why do you think money when you see it? Because it looks like money. It's designed to look like money. So I'm going to find somebody who manufactures these so that we don't get screwed on the price. And then I will buy lots and lots of them for you guys. And we can, oh, shit, there we go. But I don't want you to go out and spend something stupid on these, $6 or $7 a piece for these. That's just idiotic. There's no reason anyone should do that. And unfortunately, a lot of places charge that much for them. So let me find a really big stash of them somewhere, and we'll get them for a good price. No, that was copper. I tell people silver, but I'm switching over to silver and copper because I believe by the end of the year, even though copper won't make you as much money, you need to have a little bit. But if you're just going into this to make as much money as possible, as safely as possible, silver is always the best, period. It always beats gold. So, but the reason I'm getting into copper is because I believe that with the inflation that we're hooked to now, I mean, there's no way around it. There's absolutely nothing we can do to get away from this inflation. We've locked ourselves into double-digit inflation. Anything that we bitched about under Joe Biden, so it's going to look tame compared to what we're walking into now. And, what can I say? A fucking war. It's war. This is what somebody has to pay for this. Somebody has to pay for this war. Now, I can tell you that the Iranians are paying in lives and billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of damage. And we're going to pay with incredibly inflated prices. And we're going to have to print lots of money because we've just spent billions and billions of dollars per hour bombing a country. Did we need to? Depends on who you ask, I suppose. But, I think that war is the ultimate failure of men. You can't fail any worse. Yes, because we go through cycles, and the inflation is going to get pretty bad for the next year or two. And then, it'll do what it always does. It'll come back down. And again, if you have your money in gold and silver or gold, silver, and copper, there's no inflation for you. There is no inflation for you. Just remember that. Okay? Just remember that what we paid for a house for all this inflation in the last 25 years, what we paid for a house then in dollars was tiny compared to what it costs now. But if you use silver as the analogy, what we paid for a house back then was much, much, much higher than what we would pay now in silver. So the cost in real money, not this asswipe garbage that they give us that they say is money, in terms of real money, the cost of a house in the United States has gone down dramatically. Unfortunately, we don't use real money in the United States. We use little coupons that they can just print at will. The more they print, the less each one's worth. It's so simple. Oh my God. 77 gold Krugrands? That's awesome. I might suggest that you sell a few of those. The reason I say that is because I don't want these assholes in Washington to do something tricky, like say that we're switching over to a central bank digital currency and therefore you have to turn in all of your foreign currency. You don't have to turn in gold and silver, but you do have to turn in foreign currency. Well, shit, that means everybody that's got Krugerrands, because those are actual currency in South Africa, anybody who's got Philharmonics, anybody who's got Canadian maple leaves, those are currency. Those aren't just gold and silver coins. Those are actual legitimate currency in those countries. Like a silver eagle is actually currency. Like if you want to take a gold eagle to the restaurant and pay for your breakfast, it says $50 on it. According to the United States government, your silver eagle is worth $50 US. Now, any idiot can see that the gold that it's made out of is worth $4,350. But that's not what the government says. The government says that's a $50 bill, literally, in the form of a coin. So if I did a bunch of work for you and you didn't want to have to go through Social Security and all the bullshit and having an employee, you could just say, hey man, I'm going to write up a contract. You're an independent contractor and I'm going to pay you $50. And I say, okay, I just did all this work on your property. You're going to pay me $50. And you go, yeah, but here's how I'm going to pay you the $50. And you hold up a gold eagle. And I go, oh, that $50. Okay, I'll take it. According to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, what the government says that coin's worth is what it's actually worth. And what it's worth on a secondary market, like a bullion market, is of no consequence to the transaction. Because the United States government in the Constitution has the right to set the price of precious metals and coinage. If they say that's worth $50, it's worth $50. Period. For the one that can survive the zombie apocalypse, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I look at all the disaster books, and man, they really beat around the bush completely. They don't, and it's like these guys that are like, oh yeah, I'm a Navy SEAL. It's like, oh good, well you're the worst person to give advice to a guy who's not a Navy SEAL, because you're going to give advice that's going to get them killed. They haven't been through 400,000 or 500,000 rounds of ammo. They don't get the barrel of their 45 replaced for free by an armorer that works for the United States Navy. These are people who they go pot shoot once in a while at the range. They're proficient in a sense, but no, these are not the guys you want to give advice to about how to bug out and lay down in-defilade fire and, set up an LZ where you can, all that shit. It's like, come on, man. You're you're taking this a little too seriously, and that's why I literally, when I see all of the stuff that's out there as far as survival guides, they suck. Oh, written by a Delta operator. Really? Great. Give a 45-year-old man with 3 kids some real sage advice about how to clear rooms. You know, somebody who's a Navy SEAL who can run flat out for 4 miles at an elevation of 5,000 feet. Yeah, you're not probably the guy we want information from about how to survive, because they're just not in it's a completely different world. So, oh, everybody says, oh, I don't know if I want to survive it, until they haven't eaten for 4 days and they're like, God, man, I'm hungry. I'd eat a fucking boot right now if I had one. That's the way it works. You never notice this, but tune into this one. When you go down to Skid Row and you see the people that are homeless, that are starving, none of them are trying to unalive themselves. They're fighting like hell to stay alive. It's only the people who have everything handed to them on a silver platter that go, I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. Life's hard. Yeah, guess what? Hell's harder. So there you go. All right, you guys, I'll see you tomorrow night. But in the meantime, give me a call or text me, one or the other. All right. ZPE. What we really need. ZPE. Oh, you got to stop that noise. Oh. All right. ZPE. I'm going to have to chew. I'm going to chew on that one. All right, guys. Great stream. And I will see you tomorrow night. All right.